The ship landed on Volanthos at exactly noon, when the three suns hung together in the purple sky like burning eyes watching the universe below. Danny Cole stood at the viewport and looked at the alien world spread out before him. Towers of crystal rose from the ground, each one taller than any building on Earth. Rivers of liquid light flowed between them, and in the distance, the Palace of Stars sat on a mountain made entirely of compressed starlight. He was afraid. He would never admit it to anyone, but his hands were shaking inside his uniform pockets. "The welcoming party is here," said Lavra Price from behind him. She was the team's linguist, a woman in her 30s with sharp eyes and a calm voice that never seemed to change. No matter how bad things got, Kevin Burke joined them at the viewport. He was younger than both of them, fresh out of the diplomatic academy, but he had studied alien cultures for 10 years. "They sent Kethrani guards," he said quietly. "That is not a good sign. The Kethrani hate new species." Danny turned away from the window. "They hate everyone. That is what the briefing said." "They hate us more," Kevin replied. "We are too new, too weak, to everything they are not." The airlock opened with a hiss, and warm alien air filled the ship. It smelled like burning metal and flowers that had no name in any human language. Danny walked down the ramp first, his boots touching alien soil for the first time in his life. The Kethrani guards stood in a line at the bottom of the ramp. They were tall, nearly 3 meters, with skin like polished stone and eyes that glowed with inner fire. Their armor was alive, shifting and moving on their bodies like a second skin. Each one carried a weapon that hummed with energy. None of them spoke. Danny stopped in front of the largest guard and waited. The silence stretched on for a long moment. Then the guard turned without a word and began walking toward a transport vehicle. The message was clear: follow or be left behind. The transport carried them through the city toward the Palace of Stars. Danny watched the alien world pass by outside the window. Creatures he had never seen before walked the streets alongside beings made of pure light. Ships flew overhead in patterns that made no sense to human eyes. Everything was beautiful and strange and completely beyond anything Earth had ever created. "They have been building this civilization for 60,000 years, Lavra said softly. "Our entire recorded history is nothing to them. A blink of an eye." Danny did not respond. There was nothing to say. The Palace of Stars was even more impressive up close. The walls were made of something that looked like frozen lightning, and the gates were guarded by creatures that existed in multiple dimensions at once. Danny could only see parts of them, and looking directly at them made his head hurt. Inside, the Court of Stars waited. The throne room was massive. Thousands of alien delegates filled the space, representing species from across the galaxy. Some had bodies, some were clouds of gas or patterns of light. Some existed in forms that human minds could not fully understand. All of them turned to watch as the three humans walked down the central path toward the throne. The whispers started immediately. Danny heard them in his translator earpiece. 100 voices speaking 100 languages, all saying the same thing. Humans, the new ones, the weak ones, the ones who would fail. "Look at them," someone said. "They cannot even breathe on half the planets in this sector." "Their lifespans are measured in decades," another voice added. "They will be dead before the next council meeting." Why did the king even invite them? It is a waste of everyone's time. Danny kept walking. His face showed nothing. At the end of the path, King Zorvath sat on his throne of condensed starlight. The king was ancient beyond measure. His body shifted constantly between states of matter, sometimes solid, sometimes liquid, sometimes pure energy. His eyes were compound, like an insect's, but they held intelligence that made Danny feel like a child standing before a god. Lady Methra of the Kethrani stood at the foot of the throne. She was beautiful in a terrifying way, her stone skin carved. with patterns that told the story of her species' conquests. When she saw the humans, her lips curled into something like a smile. "So these are the creatures from Earth," she said. Her voice carried across the entire room. I expected something more impressive. Danny stopped 10 meters from the throne and bowed, as he had been taught. Lavra and Kevin did the same. "Great King," Danny said, "we are honored to be invited to your court. Humanity thanks you for this opportunity." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Lady Methra did not hide her amusement. "Opportunity?" she said. "You misunderstand your situation, human. You are here because the king invites all spacefaring species to compete for the position of royal advisor. It is tradition, nothing more. No one expects you to actually compete." "With respect," Danny replied, "we did not travel 40 light years to watch from the sidelines." The laughter stopped. Lady Methra's expression changed. "You think you can compete with us?" She gestured at the assembled delegates. "The Vargs have a hive mind that contains the knowledge of 10,000 years. The Shalani are beings of pure energy who have witnessed the birth of stars. My own people have conquered 100 worlds and survived wars that would reduce your entire civilization to ash. And you think your species, with your soft skin and your short lives and your tiny planet, can stand among us?" Danny met her gaze without flinching. "I think we have nothing to lose by trying. You have your dignity to lose, your species' reputation, the respect of every civilization in this room. Those things only have value if we care about them more than we care about reaching for something greater." Silence fell over the court. Lady Methra stared at Danny with something new in her glowing eyes. It was not respect, not yet. But it was not pure contempt either. On his throne, King Zorvath leaned forward slightly. It was the first movement he had made since the humans entered the room. "The trials begin tomorrow at dawn," the king said. His voice was like thunder and whispers combined, heard directly in the mind rather than through the ears. "All delegates will participate. The winner will stand at my side and advise me on matters affecting the entire celestial dominion." He looked directly at Danny Cole. "All delegates," he repeated. "No exceptions." Danny bowed again. "We will be ready, great king." As they were escorted to their quarters, Lavra walked close to Danny. "That was either very brave or very stupid," she said quietly. Danny allowed himself a small smile. "Probably both. But we are here now. We might as well see how far we can go." Behind them, the alien court continued to watch. Tomorrow, the trials would begin, and the humans would learn exactly how small. They were in a galaxy that had forgotten what it meant to be young. But Danny Cole had not come all this way to fail quietly. If humanity was going to lose, they would lose fighting. And sometimes, that made all the difference. The first trial began when the three suns rose over Valanthos. Danny had not slept well. The bed in their quarters was designed for species that did not need physical rest. And the sounds of the alien city had kept him awake through most of the night. Lavra and Kevin looked equally tired when they gathered in the main room of their quarters. "The trial of knowledge," Kevin said, reading from his datapad. "Each delegation sends one representative to answer questions from something called the examination matrix. The questions cover science, history, philosophy, and cultural understanding across all known galactic civilizations." Danny rubbed his eyes. "How long have the other species had to study for this?" "Some of them have been preparing for centuries. The Kethrani delegate has been alive for 4,000 years. The Vorix representative has access to the memories of every member of their species who has ever lived. And we have been in space for 30 years. "Yes." Danny stood up and walked to the window. Outside, alien vehicles were already filling the streets, heading toward the Palace of Stars for the trial. Who was going to represent us? Laura stepped forward. "I should do it." Languages and knowledge are connected. I have spent my life studying how different species think and communicate. It is the closest thing we have to useful experience. Danny nodded. Then you will represent us. Do your best. That is all anyone can ask. The trial of knowledge took place in a chamber called the Hall of Infinite Memory. The walls were covered with symbols from every written language in the galaxy, and the ceiling displayed a map of the known universe in real time. Billions of stars burned overhead, each one representing a civilization that had risen, fallen, or continued to survive. The delegates sat in a circle around a raised platform. In the center of the platform floated the examination matrix, a sphere of pure logic that glowed with cold blue light. Lady Methra was there, sitting with the other Kithrani delegates. She saw the humans enter and smiled that predator's smile again. The Vorax delegate went first. It was a creature made of hundreds of smaller organisms working together, each one contributing to a collective intelligence that was older than human civilization. The Matrix asked it 50 questions about quantum physics, biological engineering, the history of the First Galactic War, and the philosophical implications of faster-than-light travel. The Vorax answered every question correctly. The crowd of observers made sounds of approval. This was expected. The Vorax were known throughout the galaxy as keepers of knowledge. The Shalani delegate went next. Being pure energy, it did not speak in words but in patterns of light that the Matrix interpreted directly. It answered questions about stellar formation, dimensional mathematics, and the ethical frameworks of non-corporeal beings. That had missed 3 questions. Still an impressive performance. Then came Lady Methra herself, representing the Kethrai. She stood on the platform with absolute confidence, her stone skin gleaming under the lights of the hall. The Matrix asked her questions about military history, conquest ethics, the psychology of subjugated species, and the chemical composition of Kithrani battle armor. She answered 47 out of 50 correctly. The Kithrani delegation cheered. More species took their turns. Most performed well. A few performed poorly and were eliminated from the competition entirely. The humans watched and waited. Finally, the Matrix spoke Laura Price's name. She walked to the platform with her head held high. Danny watched from the crowd, his hands clenched at his sides. Kevin stood beside him, barely breathing. Human representative, the Matrix said. Its voice had no emotion, no judgment. You will now answer questions to demonstrate your species' knowledge and wisdom. Begin. The first question was about the formation of black holes. Laura answered correctly, drawing on basic astrophysics that any human scientist would know. The second question was about the Treaty of Volanthos, signed 6,000 years ago between 12 founding species of the Celestial Dominion. Laura did not know the answer. She guessed, and she guessed wrong. The third question was about the mating rituals of a species that lived in the core of gas giants. Wrong again. The questions continued. Laura answered some correctly, based on the limited information humanity had gathered since first contact. But most of her answers were wrong. She simply did not have access to the knowledge that older species had accumulated over millennia. The crowd grew restless. Some delegates laughed openly. Lady Methra watched with satisfaction. 40 questions passed. Laura had answered only 12 correctly. Then came the final question. Define the nature of progress, the Matrix said. Laura paused. She looked at the Matrix, then at the assembled delegates, then at Danny and Kevin in the crowd. May the first ask a question first? She said. The Matrix pulsed. You may. How did the Vorax define progress when they answered this question? The Vorax defined progress as the measurable accumulation of technological and social advancement over time. Laura nodded. And the Kethrani? The Kethrani defined progress as the expansion of power and influence across territory and resources. And the Shalani? The Shalani define progress as the evolution of consciousness toward higher states of existence. Lavra took a deep breath. All of those answers are valid. They come from species that have had thousands of years to develop their understanding of the universe. But they all share one thing in common. They define progress as something that happens over time, something that accumulates slowly, something that builds upon what came before. She straightened her shoulders. Humanity has a different definition. For us, progress is not about time. It is about refusal. It is the refusal to accept that what exists today must exist tomorrow. It is the refusal to believe that limits are permanent. It is the refusal to sit still when the universe tells you that you are too small, too weak, too young to matter. The hall had gone silent. My species went from living in caves to standing among the stars in less than 10,000 years. We did not have time to accumulate wisdom slowly. We had to grab it with both hands and run. Every generation pushed harder than the one before, not because they had some grand plan, but because they could not accept standing still. Lavra looked directly at Lady Methra. Progress is not what you have. It is what you hunger for. And no species in this galaxy hungers like humanity does. The Matrix was silent for a long moment. Then it spoke. Answer recorded. Human representative, you have completed the trial of knowledge. Your score is 13 correct out of 50. You are ranked last among surviving delegations. Lavra nodded and stepped down from the platform. Danny met her at the edge of the crowd. That was incredible, he said quietly. I still lost, she replied. You lost on points, but you made them listen. That is worth something. On his throne, King Zorvith had not moved throughout the entire trial. But Danny noticed that the king's compound eyes followed Lavra as she returned to the human delegation. The ancient ruler of the celestial dominion was paying attention. That night, Danny sat with his team in their quarters. We came in last, Kevin said. The other delegations are already saying we should withdraw. Are you suggesting we should? Danny asked. No, I am just stating facts. Laura was staring at the ceiling, exhausted but strangely calm. They did not expect that answer. About progress. It bothered them. Danny nodded. Good. We cannot beat them at their own game. We do not have enough knowledge, enough strength, enough time. But we can show them something they have forgotten. What is that? Danny smiled grimly. What it feels like to be hungry. The second trial would begin in 2 days. They had that long to prepare for whatever came next. Outside, the alien city hummed with life that had existed for thousands of years before humanity learned to use fire. But somewhere in that ancient palace, an immortal king was thinking about a species that measured its existence in decades and still refused to quit. The trial was not over yet. The court of stars buzzed with rumors that 3 days had passed since the trial of endurance. Of the 20 delegations that had entered Margin's Edge, only 8 had survived. The Variks had lost 3 of their 5 members. 2 entire species had been eliminated when their delegations failed to reach the extraction point. Even the mighty Kethrani had lost one of their warriors to a predator ambush, and the humans had survived. All 3 of them. Danny sat in their quarters, treating the wounds he had received on the Death World. The medical supplies from Earth were limited, but they were enough. Lavra was sleeping, exhausted beyond anything she had ever experienced. Kevin was at the window, watching the alien city below. They are talking about us, Kevin said. What are they saying? Mixed things. Some say we got lucky. Some say the king arranged for us to have an easy landing zone. But some are saying something else. Danny looked up. What? They are saying we should not have survived. That no species with our physical limitations should have been able to endure that trial. They're starting to ask questions about humans that they never asked before. There was a knock at the door. Danny opened it to find a Kethrani messenger standing outside. The creature towered over him, its stone skin gleaming in the corridor lights. "The king summons all remaining delegations to the Hall of Stars," the messenger said. "The sixth trial begins now." The sixth trial was the trial of worth. Each delegation would stand before King Zorvath and explain why their species deserved to serve as royal advisor. It was not a test of strength or knowledge or endurance. It was a test of persuasion that the surviving delegations gathered in the throne room. The Kethrani stood on one side, the remaining warriors forming a wall of living stone. The Vorks clustered together, their collective consciousness still, reeling from the losses on Margin's edge. The Shalani floated in patterns of light that expressed both confidence and grief. 3 other species completed the circle, each one ancient, powerful, and convinced of their own superiority. And in the middle stood the humans. King Zorvath sat on his throne of starlight, his form shifting slowly between states of matter. His compound eyes swept across the assembled delegations, seeing everything, judging everything. "You have endured 5 trials," the king said. His voice resonated through the hall, heard not with ears but with minds. "You have demonstrated knowledge, strength, endurance, creativity, and will. But none of these qualities matter if you cannot explain why your species deserves to stand at my side." He gestured with a limb made of pure energy. "Each delegation will speak. You will tell me what your species offers to the celestial dominion. You will convince me that your voice should guide the future of 100,000 worlds. Begin." The Kethrani went first. Lady Methra stepped forward, her movements graceful despite the weight of her stone body. "Great King, my species has served the Dominion for 8,000 years. We have fought in every major war. We have conquered worlds that threaten the peace. We have proven our loyalty through blood and sacrifice. Our wisdom is the wisdom of warriors, hard-won through combat. We offer you strength, dedication, and unwavering service." She bowed and stepped back. The Kethrani delegation rumbled with approval. The Vorks spoke next, their collective voice emerging from dozens of mouths at once. "Great King, we offer the combined knowledge of 10,000 years. Our hive mind contains memories that predate the founding of the Dominion itself. We have solved problems that other species could not even understand. We offer you intelligence beyond the limitations of individual consciousness." The Shalani followed, their light patterns forming words that translated directly into meaning. "Great King, we are beings of pure energy. We have witnessed the birth of stars and the death of galaxies. We understand the universe at a level that physical beings cannot comprehend. We offer you perspective that transcends the concerns of matter and time." One by one, the other delegations made their arguments. Ancient alliances, vast resources, technologies that could reshape reality itself. Each species offered something valuable, something that had taken thousands of years to develop. And it was the human's turn. Danny Cole walked forward and stood before the throne of King Zorvath. He was smaller than every other representative in the room. His lifespan was shorter. His species was younger. By every measure that mattered to the Court of Stars, he was the least qualified being to speak. He spoke anyway. "Great King," Danny said, "I will not waste your time telling you what humanity offers. The truth is, we have very little to offer. We are new to the galaxy. Our knowledge is limited. Our technology is primitive compared to what I have seen on this world. Our bodies are weak, our lives are short, and our civilization is barely a footnote in the history of the cosmos." Murmurs rippled through the hall. This was not how persuasion was supposed to work. "But I have a question, Great King. In 11,000 years of rule, how many species have you watched rise and fall?" Zorvath's form rippled. "Many thousands. And of those thousands, how many became so comfortable in their power that they stopped growing? How many built empires that lasted for millennia, only to crumble when they faced a challenge they had never imagined? How many species sat in halls like this one, convinced of their own superiority, and never saw the threat coming until it was too late? The murmurs stopped. The hall was silent. Every delegation that spoke before me told you what they are. They told you about their achievements, their history, their accumulated power. And those things are impressive. I do not deny that. Danny looked around the room, meeting the eyes of each species in turn. But none of them told you what they might become, because they believe they have already become everything they will ever be. They have reached the peak of their evolution, the height of their power, the end of their growth. They are finished products. He turned back to the king. Humanity is not a finished product. We are still climbing. We are still reaching. We have not yet discovered who we will be in 100 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years. We might fail. We might destroy ourselves before we reach our potential. That is a real possibility. But we might not. We might become something that this galaxy has never seen before. A species that refuses to accept limits. A species that looks at the impossible and asks why not. A species that has been told for 30 years that we are too small, too weak, too young to matter, and has spent every day since then proving that voice wrong. Danny's voice grew stronger. Every other delegation asked you to choose them because of what they have done. I am asking you to choose us because of what we have not yet done. Because the future belongs to species that are still hungry enough to fight for it. And, Great King, no species in this galaxy is hungrier than humanity. He bowed his head. You do not need another advisor who will tell you how great the Dominion already is. You need an advisor who will push the Dominion to become greater. You need a species that does not know how to stop reaching. That is what we offer. Not our achievements. Our hunger. Danny stepped back. The throne room was completely silent. Even Lady Methra had nothing to say. The argument had been so different from anything they expected that they did not know how to respond. King Zorvath sat motionless on his throne. His compound eyes were fixed on Danny Cole, studying the human with an intensity that made Danny's skin crawl. Finally, the king spoke. I have heard all arguments. I will make my decision tomorrow when the trial concludes. He rose from his throne, something he had not done in 300 years. You are all dismissed. As they left the hall, Lavra walked beside Danny. That was either brilliant or insane, she said quietly. Danny's hands were shaking again. I told them the truth. We have nothing to offer except potential. If that is not enough, then we were never going to win anyway. Behind them, the ancient species of the galaxy whispered among themselves. The human had said something that bothered them deeply, because deep down, in places they did not want to examine, they knew he was right. They had stopped growing a long time ago, and somewhere in that silent realization, the court of stars began to change. The fourth trial was the one everyone feared. Danny read the announcement 3 times to make sure he understood it correctly. The trial of endurance would take place on a planet called Margin's Edge. Each delegation would send their full team to survive 1 complete rotation of the planet, approximately 47 standard hours. Those who survived would advance. Those who did not would be eliminated in the most permanent way possible. This is a death world, Kevin said, pulling up everything the Galactic database had on Margin's Edge. The atmosphere is toxic to most carbon-based life. The temperature swings from extreme heat to extreme cold every 6 hours. And the native wildlife has specifically evolved to hunt and kill intelligent species. Why would anything evolve to hunt intelligent species? Lavra asked. Because intelligent species kept trying to colonize the planet. The wildlife adapted. Now it sees thinking creatures as prey. Danny studied the images on Kevin's datapad. Margin's edge looked like a nightmare made real. Jagged mountains rose from plains of black sand. Rivers of acid cut through valleys filled with plants that moved on their own. And in the shadows, things with too many limbs and too many teeth waited for fresh meat to arrive. "How are the other species preparing?" Danny asked. "The Vorix are relying on their hive mind. They believe collective intelligence will help them avoid danger. The Shalani think their energy forms will make them immune to physical threats. The Kethrani are bringing weapons. And us?" Kevin was quiet for a moment. "We have nothing, Danny. Our bodies cannot survive the atmosphere without suits. We have no natural weapons. We are slower and weaker than almost everything on that planet. Then, we need to be smarter." Lavra stood up and walked to the window. "I have been studying the ecosystem of Margin's Edge since we learned about the trial. The predators there hunt using multiple senses. Heat, sound, chemical signatures, even electrical impulses from brain activity. Can we mask all of those? Maybe. The plants on the planet produce chemicals as part of their own defense systems. Some of those chemicals interfere with the predator's senses. If we can identify and extract the right compounds, we might be able to hide ourselves." Danny nodded slowly. "What else?" "Fire. The planet has very little natural fire because the atmosphere suppresses combustion in most areas. But there are pockets where oxygen concentration is higher. If we can find one of those pockets and create fire, the predators will not know how to respond. They have no evolutionary experience with it." Kevin looked skeptical. "You want us to survive a death world using plants and fire? The Kethrani have plasma cannons. The Kethrani will try to fight. Fighting attracts attention. We will try to hide and adapt. It is what humans have always done." Danny made his decision. "We prepare Laura's way. Study everything about that planet. Learn its patterns. Find its weaknesses. We cannot outfight this world, so we will outthink it." The transport ship carried all surviving delegations to Margin's Edge 2 days later. Danny stood at the viewport again, watching the death world grow larger as they approached. It was even worse up close. Storms of acid rain swept across the northern hemisphere. Earthquakes cracked the surface every few hours. And even from orbit, he could see things moving in the darkness below. Lady Methra approached him before landing. "Human," she said, "I will give you one chance to withdraw. The trial of knowledge was embarrassing, but you survived. This trial will kill you. Your species is not built for survival." Danny did not look away from the viewport. "Neither was yours once. The Kethrani homeworld was a paradise before your people turned it into a fortress. You adapted. We will adapt too. We had 10,000 years to adapt. You have 47 hours. Then we will have to work fast." The delegations landed in different zones across the planet. The humans were dropped in a valley between 2 mountain ranges, where the acid rivers flowed close together and the predator population was especially dense. Danny suspected this was not an accident. As soon as the transport lifted off, they moved. Laura had identified a cave system 2 kilometers north of their landing site. The caves would provide shelter from the temperature swings and limit the directions from which predators could approach. Kevin carried their survival gear. Danny carried the chemical compounds Laura had synthesized during the journey. The first predator found them within an hour. It came out of the black sand like a nightmare rising from the deep. 6 legs, each one ending in claws that could cut through metal. A head that was mostly mouth, filled with teeth designed to crack bone. Eyes that glowed with hungry intelligence. Danny froze. Every instinct told him to run. But running would trigger the creature's chase response. Lavra moved slowly, pulling a container from her pack. She opened it and let the chemical compound inside spread through the air. The smell was terrible, like rotting meat mixed with something chemical and wrong. The predator stopped. Its head moved back and forth, confused. The compound was interfering with its ability to sense them. It could see them, but its other senses were telling it they were not prey. They were just part of the landscape. Not worth eating. After a long moment, the creature turned and disappeared back into the sand. Kevin let out a breath he had been holding. That actually worked. It will not work forever, Laura said. The compound fades after a few hours. We need to keep moving. They reached the caves as the first temperature shift hit. The air went from hot to freezing in less than 30 minutes. Outside, they could hear predators moving through the valley, searching for prey that had been caught in the open. The Vorix delegation was caught in the open. Danny watched through a crack in the cave wall as the hive mind creatures tried to coordinate their defense. But the predators of Margin's Edge had evolved to deal with collective intelligence. They attacked from multiple directions at once, overwhelming the Vorix's ability to process and respond. By morning, only 2 of the 5 Vorix remained. The second night was worse. A pack of hunters surrounded the cave entrance. These were different from the first predator. Smaller, faster, and they hunted together. Laura's chemical compounds kept them confused, but they did not leave. They waited outside, knowing that eventually their prey would have to move. We cannot stay here, Kevin said. The trial ends in 18 hours. We have to reach the extraction point on the other side of the valley. Danny looked at the predators circling outside. If we go out there, they will kill us. If we stay here, we fail the trial. Laura was studying the creatures through her scanner. They are afraid of light. Look at their eyes. They are designed for darkness. They have never seen anything brighter than the bioluminescence of the cave fungi. Danny understood. We need fire. The oxygen concentration here is too low. But there is a pocket of higher concentration about 200 meters east. If we can reach it, we can start a fire. How do we reach it with those things outside? Laura held up the last container of chemical compound. We run. It was the longest 200 meters of Danny's life. They burst from the cave covered in the chemical mixture, running as fast as their human legs could carry them. The predators hesitated, confused by the scent that told them these creatures were not food. But confusion only lasted seconds. Then the chase began. Danny could hear them behind him, claws tearing through sand and rock. Kevin stumbled, and Danny grabbed his arm, pulling him forward. Laura was ahead, leading them toward the oxygen pocket she had identified. They reached it just as the first predator caught up. Danny had prepared the fire-starting materials during their time in the cave. Dried plant matter, chemical accelerants, everything he needed. He struck the ignition mechanism and threw it into the oxygen-rich air. The fire bloomed like a small sun. The predators screamed. They had no experience with fire, no evolutionary response except pure terror. They fled into the darkness, howling with fear and pain. Danny, Laura, and Kevin stood in the circle of firelight, breathing hard, covered in alien mud and the blood from cuts they had not even noticed receiving. We survived, Kevin said, amazement in his voice. Not yet, Danny replied. We still have to reach the extraction point. But now we know how. They traveled through the rest of the night, using fire to clear their path. When dawn came and the temperature swung back to deadly heat, they found shelter and waited. When darkness returned, they moved again. 40-7 hours after landing on Margin's Edge, the 3 humans walked out of the wilderness and reached the extraction point. The Kethrani delegation was already there. Lady Mathra stared at the humans as they emerged from the darkness. All 3 of them were wounded, exhausted, barely able to stand. But they were alive. How? Lady Mathra demanded. You have no natural defenses. No weapons that could harm those creatures. How did you survive? Lava wiped blood from her forehead and met the Kethrani's glowing eyes. "We learned," she said simply. "That is what humans do." King Zorvath would hear about this. And for the first time, the Court of Stars would begin to wonder if they had underestimated the newcomers from Earth. The announcement would come at noon. Danny stood at the window of their quarters, watching the three sons of Volanthos rise into their positions. In a few hours, King Zorvath would name his new royal advisor. The decision would shape the future of the Celestial Dominion for centuries to come. Lara joined him at the window. "How do you feel?" "Terrified," Danny admitted. "Yesterday, I stood before an immortal king and told him that the most powerful species in the galaxy had stopped growing. I basically insulted everyone in that room. You told the truth. The truth does not always win." Kevin came out of his room, already dressed in his formal uniform. "The transport will be here soon. Whatever happens today, we should be proud of how far we came." Danny nodded. He did not feel proud. He felt like a man standing at the edge of a cliff, waiting to see if the ground would hold. The throne room was packed when they arrived. Every surviving delegation had gathered for the announcement, along with thousands of observers from across the Dominion. This was history being made, and everyone wanted to witness it. The Kethrani delegation stood in their usual formation, Lady Methra at the front. She looked confident. The Kethrani had served the Dominion faithfully for millennia. They had the strongest claim to the position. The Vorix clustered together, their collective consciousness reaching out to gather every piece of information in the room. They were calculating probabilities, analyzing facial expressions, trying to predict the outcome before it was announced. The Shalani floated in complex patterns, their energy forms pulsing with anxiety. They had existed since before most civilizations were born. The idea of being rejected was something they had never truly considered, and the humans stood quietly. Three small figures in a sea of giants. King Zorvath appeared on his throne in a burst of light that made everyone shield their eyes. When the light faded, the ancient ruler sat in his usual place, his form shifting slowly between states of matter. "The trials are complete," the king said. His voice filled the hall, reaching every mind at once. 8 delegations survived. Each has proven themselves worthy of consideration. Each has offered something of value to the Dominion. He paused, and the silence stretched on for a long moment. "I have ruled the Celestial Dominion for 11,000 years. In that time, I have made decisions that shaped the fate of billions. I have watched species rise from nothing and fall to nothing. I have seen empires built and destroyed. I have witnessed events that most beings cannot imagine." Zorvath's compound eyes swept across the assembled delegations. "And I have grown tired." Shocked murmurs rippled through the crowd. The king continued, "Not tired of ruling. Tired of watching the same patterns repeat themselves. Every century, the same conflicts arise. Every millennium, the same mistakes are made. The Dominion does not change because its leaders do not change. We have become comfortable in our power, confident in our wisdom, certain of our place in the universe." His gaze settled on Lady Methra. "The Kethrani offered me loyalty and strength, valuable qualities. But the Kethrani have served me for 8,000 years, and in that time, your species has not changed. You are the same warriors today that you were when your ancestors first joined the Dominion. You have perfected what you are, but you have stopped reaching for what you could become." Lady Methra's stone face showed no expression, but her hands clenched at her sides. Zorvath turned to the Vorix. "The Vorix offered me knowledge and collective intelligence. Impressive qualities. But your hive mind contains the same knowledge it contained 1,000 years ago. You have preserved the past perfectly, but you have stopped creating the future. You remember everything, but you imagine nothing." The Vorix collective trembled, hundreds of small organisms responding to the criticism. The Shalani offered me perspective beyond physical existence. Noble qualities. But your perspective has become so vast that you have lost touch with the struggles of mortal beings. You see the birth and death of stars, but you have forgotten what it means to fight for survival. You have transcended so much that you have nothing left to reach for. The Shalani patterns flickered with something that might have been shame. King Zorvath rose from his throne. For the first time in 300 years, he stood before his subjects, his form solidifying into something almost humanoid. I did not invite these species to compete because I wanted to reward past achievement. I invited them because I wanted to find something the Dominion has lost. Something essential. Something I have not seen in 10,000 years. He walked down the steps from his throne, each footstep echoing through the silent hall. Hunger. Zorvath stopped in front of the human delegation. The humans came to my court, knowing they would be mocked. They competed in trials, knowing they would fail. They survived a death world, using nothing but their minds and their refusal to die. And when they stood before me to argue their worth, they did not list achievements or offer promises. They told me the truth. Danny forced himself to meet the king's eyes. They were ancient beyond measure, filled with the weight of 11,000 years. The truth, Zorvath continued, is that they have almost nothing to offer. They are weak, young, and ignorant compared to every other species in this room. By any rational measure, choosing them would be foolish. The hall held its breath. But I am not choosing a species that has proven itself. I am choosing a species that might prove itself. I am choosing a species that has not yet reached its peak because it does not believe in peaks. I am choosing a species that looks at the impossible and asks why not. Zorvath turned to address the entire hall. The humans will serve as my royal advisors, not because they are the best of what the galaxy has to offer, but because they remind me of what we have all forgotten. The hunger that drives a species to reach beyond its grasp. The refusal to accept limits as permanent. The fire that burns in beings who know their time is short and refuse to waste a single moment. Lady Methra stepped forward. Great King, this is madness. They are children. They will be dead in decades while we will endure for centuries. How can they possibly advise you on matters that will unfold over millennia? Zorvath smiled. It was a strange expression on his shifting face, but it was unmistakably a smile. That, Lady Methra, is exactly why I chose them. Because they know their time is limited. Because they cannot afford to wait. Because they will push for progress now, not in 1,000 years. The Dominion has waited long enough. It is time to move forward again. He turned back to Danny. You told me that the future belongs to species that are still hungry enough to fight for it. I am giving you the chance to prove it. Serve me well, human. Show my court that I was right to believe in your potential. Danny bowed deeply. We will not disappoint you, great king. I know you will not. That is why I chose you. The announcement rippled across the Dominion at the speed of light. Billions of beings learned that the most powerful ruler in the galaxy had chosen the weakest species to stand at his side. Some were outraged. Some were confused. Some were intrigued. But on a small blue planet 40 light-years away, a species that had been looking at the stars for thousands of years finally had proof that they belonged among them. That night, Danny stood on a balcony of the palace, looking up at an alien sky filled with unfamiliar constellations. Laura and Kevin stood beside him, still processing what had happened. What do we do now? Kevin asked. Danny thought about the question. They were royal advisors to the most powerful being in the known galaxy. They had responsibilities that would shape the future of 100,000 worlds. The weight of it was almost unbearable. We do what humans have always done, Danny said finally. We reach for something we cannot quite touch. We push against limits that everyone says are permanent. We prove that being small and weak and mortal does not mean being insignificant. He looked at his friends, his team, the only other humans within light years. We were mocked by every species in that court. They thought we were a joke. But the king saw something in us that they had forgotten. Hunger, potential, the refusal to accept that tomorrow has to be like today. Lara smiled. So we show them what hungry species can do. Exactly. Danny turned back to the stars. The galaxy has been sleeping for too long. Time to wake it up. Somewhere in the palace, King Zorvath watched the humans through sensors hidden in the walls. He had ruled for 11,000 years. He had seen countless species rise and fall. He had grown so old that he had forgotten what it felt like to be young. But watching these fragile, short-lived creatures plan their impossible future, he felt something he had not felt in millennia. Hope that the humans were probably going to fail. Their ambitions were too great, their resources too limited, their time too short. But they were going to try anyway. And in the attempt, they might just remind the galaxy what it meant to be alive. That was worth more than all the ancient wisdom in the universe. The Court of Stars had chosen its new advisor, and the future would never be the same.